Les Murray died in the Australian bush. He lived there, and he was old, and his time had come. Les Murray was one of the great Australian poets. He was a little odd, a bit of a Grinch, actually. But I think his poems always kept him from being truly mean. Les Murray was a man of huge girth and height, and near the end of his life, he wrote a little poem about a big man getting out of a tiny car. And this poem amazingly juxtaposes heaviness with agility, lightness and heaviness, humor and the struggle of life, but even a little poem can hold all that together. Listen to this short poem. Big man leaving a small car, turns over, lies across his seat, grips the steering wheel, and throws out a pair of trampling feet which bend sleekly to the asphalt. He then dips his face from under the dash up into view, grinning at the end of an eclipse, and writhes upright, balancing, complete. Oh, how that poem, with a sense of humor, brings in the struggle of our lives. We're all writhing and struggling to find our balance and our completeness. And I think grinning at the end of an eclipse is one of the great lines in poems. Eclipse, two large celestial bodies, one in front of the other. When a big man is standing by a tiny car, it's an eclipse. And he's grinning. Somehow this poem holds lightness and heaviness together. I want to talk this morning about lightness. Because we have much heaviness in our lives. I'm not talking about our size, I'm talking about our lives. There is much that is heavy to our lives. You're a human being. As a human being, you are trying to manage for a better future. You're a human being. This is a basic anxiety we all hold. We're trying to do our best to manage our way to a better future, and that's anxiety producing. And so all of life can take on a certain heaviness. And so we need some lightness. That after the struggle to grin at the eclipse, to find our balance, we need some lightness. One of my favorite phrases has always been lightness of being. That's what I use to remind myself to have a little bit of a sense of humor about things, to take myself with a certain sense of humor. I say lightness of being to myself a lot. Now, I have always been vaguely aware that Milan Kundera has a very different sense of that phrase. Milan Kundera wrote The Unbearable Lightness of Being, one of the great novels in the 1980s. For him, it means something completely different. So I read that novel this week, and it is completely different. By lightness of being, he's speaking of something that is fearsome, not what I mean. You see, he believes that human beings have to struggle to find meaning in life, and if you take things too superficially or with triviality, you won't have any gravity or depth. That's the unbearable lightness of being. Well, let me give you some background. Milan Kundera was Czechoslovakian. And remember with me the large history here. In 1953, Stalin's reign of terror ended. And around the fringes of the Soviet Union, in some places, things began to open up. Society began to reform. And remember, in Prague, specifically, where Milan lived, there was a sort of tolerance and openness. It almost looked like Prague and Czechoslovakia was going to become a democratic nation. And remember 1968. It's called the Prague Spring. Everything looked like a bright future. But also remember, it was in 1968 that the Soviet tanks rolled back in and put the iron grip of tyranny upon Prague and Czechoslovakia once again. Well, Milan Kundera was writing stories then that were openly critical of the Soviet Union. And so they took away his publishing rights. Tyranny. So he had a choice. Do you stay and lose your voice? Or do you find a way to keep writing? So he left. Basically, The Unbearable Lightness of Being was written in exile. Now, as I'm reading this book, I'm realizing that for Milan Kundera, life itself doesn't necessarily have meaning. And so it's up to each person to carve out some sense of purpose. And this novel presents a choice between heaviness and lightness. Will you take on more burdens to lead an authentic life, or will you lead a life of just lightness and superficiality? It's a fearsome choice. By the way, I don't really recommend the novel that much. He sort of writes it from a terribly male perspective and all the romance scenes. It's a little bit odd, but that struggle he talks about, I realized as I was reading that struggle to find meaning in life, it's what happens if you don't believe in God. You see, for Milan Kundera, there is no God. He's basically an existentialist. He thinks you have been simply thrown into your life. It's a random thing. You've just been thrown into life, and now it's all on you to create some meaning. And this struggle is just so grinding if you don't think there's God. Do you know, I think I run into French existentialists every day. I do. And I'm worried, particularly some of the younger folks, when they don't think there's God, well, then they think it's all on them to find some path that gives some meaning to life. Do you hear the burden to this? That life itself isn't intrinsically meaningful. There's no inherent worth or dignity to life. So you have to somehow create it. Do you feel that burden? I realized as I was reading the novel, I don't have a dog in that fight because I believe in God. You see, if you believe in God, then meaning and purpose is embedded in reality itself. If you believe in God, the God of love, then values are actually part of reality. We don't make these up: love, peace, justice, hope. Values are real. And there's meaning and purpose. Our challenge isn't to create meaning. Our challenge is to participate in it. Oh, those people I talk to and the weight upon them. And then I hear Jesus' voice saying, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you rest. I'm a calm and gentle spirit." Yes, when I use the phrase lightness of being, I mean it in a completely different way than Milan Kundera. I believe because of God, your life has purpose and direction. Values are real. We're not making them up. They're part of reality. And so as you seek to participate in this meeting, I know you might carry many burdens, and so I'm praying for you more lightness of being. And by lightness of being, I mean a sort of perspective in the midst of the struggle, sort of grinning at the end of an eclipse. When I say lightness of being, I don't mean I wish for you more diversions or entertainments. We have lots of those. I mean having that lightness in the midst of daily life, in the midst of your struggles. I don't mean by lightness of being the way we anesthetize ourselves with alcohol or diversions. I mean even in the midst of the daily grind to have some lightness of being. I walk into hospital rooms all the time, and it amazes me how often someone in the midst of suffering will have a lightness of being. They'll smile, they'll make little jokes. It's astounding, the courage to see this lightness of being that people can have in the midst of suffering. I'm amazed every time, and it's wonderful. In March 1981, do you remember? I actually do, because I was playing in an away high school baseball game. In 1981, when Ronald Reagan was shot. Now, that bullet punctured his left lung, created major internal bleeding. He could have died. As he was being rolled into the operating room, do you remember what he said to the surgeons right before they put him under? He said, "Please tell me you're Republican." This type of lightness of being, even in the midst of that trauma. This is what I pray for us all. Do you remember when Nancy finally got to the hospital after the surgery? Ronald Reagan comes out of the anesthesia, and the first words to Nancy were, "Honey, I forgot to duck." A lightness of being. And when I say I pray for you a lightness of being, I mean some lightness about how you take yourself. Because we can have this self-identity that we think we have to protect. I can have this sort of portentous, sort of imposing sense of who Jim is, and somehow I have to maintain this. I mean a lightness of being about how you perceive yourself. We can be sort of naturally pretentious. I mean a lightness. G.K. Chesterton once said, "Do you know why angels can fly? Because they take themselves so lightly." That's what I mean, to take ourselves lightly. I want to tell you a story that is completely inappropriate for a sermon. Wait, I just saw you lean in. Now you're listening to me. Now you're listening. This story is completely inappropriate in a sermon, but it goes to my point. So here it is. I was an associate pastor in Newport Beach, just out of seminary. My office was up on the second floor. The senior minister's office was on the ground floor. And one afternoon, I had just gone across the street to a taqueria and got a big plate of beans and rice and carnitas. And I'd taken that back to my office, and I had a big lunch, and I was up there, and it was early afternoon, and I was passing a lot of wind, or breaking wind. I don't know what it's, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. And I mean a lot of wind, okay? And I'm up there alone in my office, and then suddenly there's a knock on the door. And it's the senior minister saying, I need to talk to you, Jim. And he opens the door. And this was a man of some station. This was a man with some gravity and sort of an imperial bearing. And he strode into the room and said, Jim, I need to talk to you. And then he stopped and took a deep breath. and he said to me, are you smoking cigars up here? My only response could be, no, I am not smoking cigars. A totally inappropriate story for the pulpit, but that line, no, I am not smoking cigars, has become very important to me when I become a bit, when I think I have an imperial bearing. When I begin to think that my identity is something I'm protecting, I say to myself, you're not smoking cigars. You're not smoking. Take yourself lightly. And so, my friends, I pray for you a lightness of being. There is no great burden upon you to create meaning. The God of our universe has embedded reality itself with love and hope and direction. So you can have a lightness of being as you seek to participate in this meaning of life. May you have this lightness of being. In Christ's name, amen.